All right, so get ready because we're going deep, like really deep. Today, we're taking a deep dive into Carl Jung's Red Book.
Yeah, we're not just skimming the surface here.
No way. We're going full spelunker on this one. Headlamps on, ready to dig into the nitty-gritty, raw experiences that actually shaped Jung's later theories.
And to help us unearth all this, we've got excerpts from the Red Book, a reader's edition.
Yeah, so it's like handwritten journals.
Kind of, but imagine those journals as illuminated manuscripts.
Oh, okay, so like super fancy journals.
Exactly. And they're absolutely jam-packed with Jung's fantasies, dialogues with his unconscious, and even his own interpretations. Plus, we've got notes from the editors and translators to help us break it all down.
It's like we've got a treasure map and a guide who's already been there. Like it. So what's the treasure we're after on this deep dive?
Well, we're trying to understand the personal struggles that led Jung to this incredible self-exploration.
Right, because every journey has a starting point.
Exactly. We're also looking at how this incredibly unique book, the Red Book, even came into being.
Yeah, like what pushed him to create this thing?
And ultimately, how it all shaped the theories he's so famous for.
So let's set the scene. Picture Europe right before World War I.
Lots of tension, societal shifts, intellectual upheaval.
A world on the brink, you know. And amidst all this chaos, we have Jung, already a big name in psychology, but personally feeling, well, kind of lost.
Yeah, he was totally immersed in mythology, but he actually said he felt mythless himself.
That's pretty ironic when you think about it.
Right. And at the same time, he's working on transformations and symbols of the libido, diving deep into dreams, symbolism, even breaking away from Freud.
Oh, so he's already challenging the status quo, but still feels lost.
There was something missing. It seems like he was searching for a more personal, individual approach to psychology.
I get that. It's like textbook theories can only go so far when you're grappling with your own, inner world.
Exactly. Jung felt limited by the typical Freudian explanation.
Which were?
Focused too much on the past and on, what's wrong with people. He wanted a psychology that embraced the individual's unique path to becoming whole, to what he called the personal equation.
Personal equation. I like that.
Then boom, 1912 hits and Jung starts having these crazy vivid dreams he just can't shake off.
Oh no. Sounds rough.
They wouldn't fit into any existing psychological box.
I bet. I can only imagine how unsettling that would be for a guy who devoted his life to understanding the mind.
Especially for Jung. These weren't just any dreams, though. He felt like he needed to confront what they were saying about his inner world.
About his unconscious, right?
Right. He saw these dreams as a call to action, to embark on a journey of self-discovery. And that's where the Red Book comes in.
Hold on. So he basically decided to, I don't know, turn his dreams into art.
In a way, yeah. I mean, it's one thing to jot down some dream notes.
Totally different to create a whole, calligraphy masterpiece.
Exactly. But it wasn't just an artistic whim. Jung was meticulously documenting everything. His fantasies, dialogues with figures from his unconscious, and then adding in his own interpretations.
So systematic self-exploration.
Exactly. Though even he questioned his sanity at times.
Yeah, I could see how that could happen. So we're around 1913 now.
Right around then.
He's painstakingly filling up this big red leather-bound book. Can you imagine what his colleagues were thinking?
Well, the historical context is really important here.
Oh, right. What was happening in the world at the time?
It was a time where the lines between psychology, art, and even spirituality were super blurry.
Interesting.
Think of symbolism in art becoming a big thing, or the growing fascination with the occult. Traditional values were being questioned left and right.
So Jung was really tapping into the spirit of the times.
Totally. He was pushing the boundaries of what it meant to study the mind.
All right, so we've got this mix of personal crisis, some serious boundary pushing, and a historical backdrop that's ripe for this kind of exploration. I'm hooked. Let's meet some of the characters in Jung's inner world. Tell me about Philemon.
Ah, Philemon. Imagine a wise old man with wings.
With wings. Okay, already interesting.
Kingfisher wings, to be exact. He appears in Jung's dreams and fantasies.
That's wild.
And he becomes a sort of spiritual guide for Jung, offering profound insights and challenging him in all sorts of ways.
Okay, a winged, wise old man. That's not something you see every day, even in dreams. So what does a figure like that represent in Jung's psychological world?
Philemon embodies what Jung would later call the wise old man archetype.
Archetype.
It's like a universal pattern of wisdom and guidance that pops up in myths and stories across cultures. Think Merlin, Gandalf, even Yoda.
Oh, okay, I see. But for Jung, encountering Philemon wasn't just about recognizing this, what did you call it, archetype?
Right. For Jung, it was personal. He wasn't just reading about a concept. He was having a conversation with this figure.
So what kinds of things did Philemon reveal to Jung about himself?
Philemon didn't sugarcoat things. He challenged Jung's ego, his rational, scientific worldview.
I bet. What did he say?
Well, there's this really striking line from the Red Book where Philemon tells Jung to, and I quote, "Stop thinking you know so much."
Wow, straight to the point. So Philemon wasn't just a comforting grandpa figure.
Nope, definitely a guide, but one who pushed Jung to confront some uncomfortable truths about himself.
That's fascinating. So through these dialogues, Jung started to understand this archetype, not just as a storybook character.
But as a living force inside him, he saw how the wise old man could be both wise and a challenge to the ego's limited perspective.
Okay, one fascinating character down. Who else is in Jung's inner world?
Well, if Philemon is wisdom and challenge, then we have to talk about Salome.
Oh, and who is Salome?
She embodies something totally different, something more primal, and let's just say a bit more provocative.
Provocative, huh? All right, I'm definitely intrigued. Just we'll have to wait for part 2 to meet her.
Welcome back.
All right, we're back, ready to dive back into Jung's Red Book.
Before we go any further into Jung's journey, though, there's something important to point out.
Okay, what's that?
Jung didn't see this whole confronting and integrating the unconscious thing as like only his own personal thing.
So not just a Jung-specific thing.
Right. He actually believed it was important for everyone.
Like, for everyone's mental well-being.
Exactly, for everyone.
That makes the Red Book seem even more significant now. Like, if it's not just his personal therapy session, but potentially something we can all learn from.
Precisely. He believed that individuation, that process of becoming a whole integrated self.
Right, becoming whole.
He saw that as a universal journey. And the Red Book, with all its crazy landscapes and challenging characters.
Yeah, those definitely stood out.
He thought it could serve as a guide for all of us.
A guide, interesting. Okay, so back to our exploration then. We left off with Salome.
Ah, yes.
The, how did you put it? Provocative one.
Yeah, she's definitely captivating. She shows up as this sensual figure.
Okay, sensual, all right. What does she represent?
She represents what Jung called the anima.
Anima. Okay, hold on. Anima. Archetype. For those of us just starting out with Jung, could we define those a bit?
Sure. So think of archetypes as these universal patterns of human experience, right?
Human experience, okay.
But they're embedded in what Jung called the collective unconscious. It's like this deep wellspring of shared images, myths, and instincts, stuff we've all inherited.
Inherited, wow. And the anima specifically?
That refers to the unconscious feminine aspects within a man.
Within a man, okay.
It covers things like emotions, intuition, and relationships.
So it's not just random that Salome's in his dreams. She's like this symbol pointing to something way deeper.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that Jung's encounters with Salome, they weren't always pleasant.
Oh, how so?
He challenged him, tempted him, even threatened to overwhelm him sometimes.
Sounds a bit like those shadow elements we were talking about before. Is this where that darker side of the psyche comes into play?
Absolutely. Salome becomes this gateway for Jung to confront what he called the shadow.
The shadow, those parts of ourselves we don't like to look at.
The parts we repress, deny. For Jung, that meant confronting his sexuality, his vulnerability, even his potential for aggression.
Heavy stuff. No wonder this self-exploration wasn't always easy. So why confront these shadow elements? What was Jung hoping to get out of it, especially through Salome?
He believed that by facing the shadow, by integrating it.
Integrating it, not just ignoring it.
Exactly. That's how we become whole, authentic individuals. Not about condoning bad behavior, but about acknowledging those parts of ourselves.
So even the bad stuff has a purpose.
They're part of who we are, and denying them just creates more internal conflict.
That makes sense. So how did Salome help him integrate his own shadow?
Well, it wasn't about taming the beast or anything. It was about understanding it.
Understanding it.
And there's this passage in the Red Book where Salome actually confronts Jung.
Really? What does she say?
She accuses him of being afraid of his own feelings.
Oof, that's gotta hurt.
Right. And that forced him to acknowledge his emotional repression and to start accepting those parts of himself.
It makes you think about how often we try to just push down uncomfortable emotions, right? Instead of dealing with them.
All the time. And this shows how important it is to face those difficult parts of ourselves, especially those tied to the anima, the feminine archetype.
Right, the anima. So we've got the wise old man, the anima. Who else should we meet in this book?
There's one more we can't forget, Elijah.
Elijah, okay. And he represents
While Philemon guides Jung toward inner wisdom, and Salome forces him to face his shadow, Elijah is something else entirely. He's like a prophet, a connection to the spiritual realm.
Okay, so we've got wisdom, shadow, and now prophecy. What does that mean for Jung? How does Elijah shape his understanding of the unconscious?
Elijah embodies what Jung called logos.
Logos.
It's the principle of logic and reason. But it's not just about cold, hard facts, though.
So there's more to it.
In the Red Book, Elijah's this fiery, even terrifying figure, and he challenges Jung to connect with a deeper, more spiritual understanding of the world.
So pushing him past his rational, scientific mind. Did Jung buy into that? He always seemed to walk that line between science and spirituality.
That tension is at the heart of all of Jung's work, really. And Elijah really brings that struggle to the surface.
Interesting. So how does that play out?
Well, Jung was grappling with the limits of just a purely rational approach to psychology. He felt like there was something more, something transcendent going on.
I can see how that would be frustrating.
Yeah.
So how did he reconcile his background with these, mystical, spiritual experiences he's having?
That question really drove a lot of Jung's work. And the Red Book gives us this raw, unfiltered look at his struggles.
So what does he say?
At one point, Elijah tells Jung to make peace with the gods.
Whoa, make peace with the gods. That's intense.
It really pushed Jung to confront his ego and accept a much bigger view of reality.
Okay, big questions, big challenges. But how did all of this, like the characters, the shadow work, how did it actually become the theories he's known for?
That's where it gets really interesting. The Red Book isn't just a personal diary. It's like the workshop where Jung hammered out his ideas about the human psyche.
So all those later concepts, active imagination, the collective unconscious, individuation.
It all comes from this intense personal stuff he's working through.
Before we get into the theories, though, I need a little more context. We've met the characters, talked themes, but what about the book itself?
What about it?
Aside from being Jung's personal calligraph journey into his unconscious, what makes it so unique?
That's a great question. It's easy to get lost in the content.
Right.
But the form of the Red Book is just as important. It's not just a straight narrative. It's dreams, fantasies, poems, dialogues, even sermons and hymns.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a work of art just as much as a psychological document.
I'm picturing something like William Blake's illuminated manuscripts.
Yeah.
Visionary, symbolic, and probably not that easy to understand.
Exactly.
So how did Jung create this? Was there a method to the madness?
He used something he called active imagination.
Active imagination.
It's this technique where he consciously interacted with his unconscious. He'd give those figures, those voices from his inner world, a platform to speak.
Okay, so he's basically having conversations with them.
Exactly. And then she'd record it all, their words, the images, and then he'd reflect on what it meant.
So not just random scribbling then.
Yeah.
Real process.
A deliberate back and forth between his conscious mind and his unconscious. And it's through active imagination, which he lays out in the Red Book, that he develops some of his most well-known ideas.
Like what?
His work on archetypes and the collective unconscious, those ideas are rooted in those dialogues with figures like Philemon, Salome, and Elijah.
Right. So we're starting to connect the personal to the theory now. How did the Red Book affect Jung's ideas about therapy?
Well, he didn't tell all his patients to go create illuminated manuscripts or anything.
That would be pretty cool, though.
But he did use active imagination as a therapy technique.
So those imaginary chats with Philemon and Salome weren't just for him.
Not at all. He saw them as a model for how we can all interact with our unconscious. Calligraphy skills, optional.
Right, optional. So the Red Book isn't a how-to guide, but more like
An inspiration, a demonstration of how powerful it can be to face your unconscious and integrate those parts of yourself.
okay, this is definitely more than just a historical curiosity now. It's like a testament to how powerful that inner journey can be.
Exactly.
But let's pause here for a sec. We've covered a lot. The historical context, those fascinating characters, all these big themes from the Red Book.
And we've just started to see how these personal experiences influenced Jung's theories, but there's still more to explore.
More. Like what?
Well, we need to understand how this deep dive into his own psyche, how it changed the way he saw humanity as a whole.
All right, that sounds pretty big. Guess we'll have to wait for part 3 to find out. Okay, so we're back. We've been on quite a journey through Jung's Red Book into his inner world.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
We saw how it impacted his theories, but now I'm really curious, what did all of this teach Jung about humanity in general?
Well, imagine him coming out of that labyrinth.
Out of the Red Book.
Yeah, blinking in the sunlight back to reality. And he saw a world that was struggling with meaning. He felt like modern society, with all its emphasis on logic and material stuff, had lost touch with something important.
What do you mean?
Those deeper layers of the psyche, those ancient sources of wisdom, symbolism, all that stuff.
So it's like we traded those old myths and rituals for the rat race.
Kind of. He felt like we lost touch with something bigger than ourselves.
And that caused profits.
Jung thought it was at the root of a lot of psychological issues. He saw people feeling empty, lacking purpose, just yearning for more.
So it wasn't just a personal crisis he was dealing with, but like a collective one.
Exactly. And the Red Book, it becomes this mirror reflecting back that spiritual void.
A mirror. That's a good way to put it. But what was the solution? Did he think everyone should start having visions and painting mandalas?
He did emphasize things like dream analysis.
Oh yeah, dreams are big in Jungian thought.
Creative expression, too. Engaging with myths and stories from different cultures.
Why those things?
He saw them as ways to bridge that gap between our conscious minds and the unconscious.
That realm of symbols and archetypes we keep talking about.
Exactly.
So it's like learning to understand the language of the unconscious. Paying attention to the dreams, those gut feelings.
All those things we tend to brush off. He saw them as messages from the depth, trying to guide us, reveal patterns, push us toward wholeness.
That sounds pretty mystical. But how do we actually put that into practice? Like, I can't exactly tell my boss that Philemon told me to quit.
Right. It's not about taking those inner figures literally. It's about understanding what they symbolize.
So like dream interpretation.
Yes, start with that. Keep a dream journal. Notice the symbols that keep popping up. Explore creative outlets too. Writing, painting, music, whatever speaks to you.
I like that. Find what works for you.
And even reading myths can help you connect with those universal patterns.
It's like we've been ignoring a whole other frequency, right?
Yeah, and there might be some pretty valuable insights hidden in there. About ourselves, about the world.
I love that. But this whole integrating the unconscious thing, connecting with our personal myths, it sounds kind of daunting, to be honest.
It's definitely not a quick fix or a one-size-fits-all thing. And remember, even Jung had his struggles. It's a lifelong journey with ups and downs, shadow encounters, and those aha moments.
So it's about the journey itself, not just the destination.
Exactly. Jung believed that by facing those shadows, listening to those whispers from within,
we can create a more meaningful life.
a more authentic life, a more fulfilling life. He truly believed that.
So we started with Jung's personal crisis, explored his journey through the Red Book, and saw how it all connected to his view of humanity and the search for meaning. You said we'd be summarizing all this in 10 key points, right?
Right. It's a lot to take in, so here are 10 takeaways to keep in mind as you continue to explore the Red Book.
10 takeaways, all right, I'm listening.
Number 1, Jung faced a personal crisis, and that led him to embark on this self-experimentation.
And that's all documented in the Red Book.
Which is a totally unique blend of journal entries, artwork, and reflections. Number 2, this wasn't just for fun. He was systematically exploring his unconscious.
Driven by those vivid dreams.
And a desire to go beyond the traditional psychological theories of the time. Number 3, Jung met all sorts of archetypal figures in his inner world.
Like?
Representing wisdom.
Salome, the anima.
Right. And Elijah, representing logos. Number 4, those encounters forced him to confront his shadow.
Those parts of ourselves we try to hide.
Leading to greater self-awareness and integration. Number 5, the Red Book isn't just about Jung's personal stuff.
It reflects a broader issue, right?
Yeah, a cultural and spiritual crisis of meaning, especially in the modern world. Number 6, Jung believed that by reconnecting with the unconscious,
we could find meaning and purpose again.
Exactly. Number 7, he encouraged practices like dream analysis and active imagination.
Along with engaging with myths and symbols.
As ways to tap into that deeper level of the psyche. Number 8, the Red Book was like a testing ground for a lot of his later theories.
Like the collective unconscious, archetypes, and individuation. Big stuff.
Number 9, this whole journey wasn't about running away from reality. It was about enriching it.
By integrating the unconscious into our lives.
And number 10, Jung's exploration encourages us to look at our own personal myths.
The stories we tell ourselves, the symbols that guide our lives. Wow, that's a lot to think about.
It is.
Thanks for guiding us through this deep dive. It's been an amazing journey.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope this sparked some new insights, and maybe even a little curiosity. to explore those hidden depths within yourselves. Happy exploring.